Every October, stores everywhere fill up with these plastic Halloween skulls. I keep thinking I should make something cool from them, but I've never known what to make until now. Hey guys, welcome back to Eric's Hobby Workshop. Today we're going to be building a servo skull out of a plastic Halloween skull. If you aren't super familiar with the Warhammer world, you might not know what a servo skull is. What a servo skull is a small drone fashioned from a human skull with cybernetic attachments. Servo skulls are usually made from the skulls of loyal servants of the Emperor of Mankind who have proven themselves worthy enough to continue their service beyond death. They have a wide variety of important roles in the Imperium, acting from anything from an auto-scribe to a translator to a surveillance drone, but today I'm going to be making one that's just a basic lamp. You see these sometimes tagging along alongside Space Marines or Tech Priests or Adeptus Mechanicus guys, and they're almost like little pets. So I figured it'd be really cool to make one that's almost like a mascot for the channel that I can have in the workshop here. Alright guys, before we jump into the build, let's take a quick look at today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. If you've been around YouTube very much, you've probably heard of Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is a mobile-based RPG game where you battle your collection of heroes against a variety of enemies, clearing dungeons, collecting upgrades, and leveling up your heroes to become even more formidable. My favorite bit is upgrading your champions at the tavern. You can sacrifice your unworthy champions to make one champion stronger, or you can do it the old-fashioned way, which is you just give your champion beers until he gets stronger that way. So Raid just released the Artifact Forge, where you can save time and craft artifacts directly, as well as a whole new advanced quest system with amazing rewards. And that's not all, they also brought out some amazing new champions, and they're developing the awesome looking Doom Tower as we speak, which is something I'm super excited about. So guys, give it a shot. Go to the video description, click on the special links, and if you're a new player, you will get 200,000 silver plus one free champion, Tree Feller. Tree Feller is a great champion for a new player, so you know, if you're looking to dip your toe a little bit, your boy's got you. I'll hook you up with that Tree Feller. What you want to do is you want to collect all those rewards that I mentioned just at the top of the screen right here. So go check out Raid Shadow Legends, and thanks again to them for sponsoring today's video. Now let's build ourselves a servo skull. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is gather my materials. I've got one plastic Halloween skull here, life size. I've got this weird black piece of plastic that I found somewhere. I think it might be from an old printer or something like that. I've got a few plumbing fixtures. These are just 50 cents or so at your local hardware store. And then I've got this IKEA light. This thing is cool because it was about 10 bucks I think, and it's got a flexible neck on it that really reminds me of the look of all the conduits and cables coming out of the bottom of servo skulls. So I think it'll be perfect for this project. And before we get started, the first thing we're going to want to do is check the memento mori of the skull. It should have a sense of foreboding that reminds you of your own mortality. So to test your skull, just hold it in one hand like this, look it in the eye. Here, let me see. Alas, poor Yorick. I knew him, Horatio, a fellow of infinite jest, most excellent fancy. He hath borne me on his back 1,000 times. Now, how abhorred in my imagination it is. My gorge rises at it. Here hung those lips that I have kissed, I know not how oft. Anyways, so once we've done that, let's start cutting this thing up. So the first thing I noticed when I looked at this skull is that there is this big gnarly line down the middle of its head, and in fact there's a bunch of mold lines all over it. So I'm going to come in with a sharp X-Acto blade and try to whittle those down a little bit as best I can. A good strategy for this is to use the back of the X-Acto blade and just scrape away at it, that way you're not going to dig into the plastic too much. Next I'm going to take the screws out and remove this guy's lower mandible. Not going to need that anymore. Of course I am not going to throw this away, I'm going to throw it in the old bits box and maybe one day come up with something for that as well. So to get this light sticking out of one of my servo skull's eyes, I'm going to cut in a little hole and to give this guy's little brown painted eye hole, turn it into a real eye hole. And with a corresponding hole on the back of the skull, I'm able to feed this thing through. This light from IKEA is perfect for this because, as you can see, the light bulb part detaches from the stem, which makes it really easy to do this part. Next, I'm just going to cut out what would be, I guess, the palate, like the roof of its mouth, just to give it a little bit more of a skull shape. And then I'm going to take a plumbing fixture and fit it onto the inside so it looks like there's something mechanical sticking out of one of its eyes. This also kind of had the incidental effect of giving it sort of a bug-eyed surprised look, which I wasn't planning for, but I kind of dig it. Next, I'm bringing my little printer piece back into play. I think I'm going to stick it on the side here with some hot glue. Just making this up as I go along, if you couldn't tell. But that looks like it'll be cool. Nice basis for some mechanical piece on there. Another plumbing fitting on the front there gives it the look of some sort of recording device or sensor or something like that. Next, I'm going to come in with some pieces of black foam board and just patch up the holes that this thing left by having an imperfect join with the round side of the skull. Hot glue is awesome for this because it fills the little gaps as well. You don't have to be so precise with your cuts when you can just inject a bunch of hot glue in there. So it's my preferred glue of choice for this project, for these particular phases. Next, I'm using some of this thin craft foam. And this stuff is going to allow me to contour against the shape of the skull, putting some pieces onto the top that kind of look like sheet metal or something like that once they're painted. But as you can see, they get a nice round surface area that conforms to the skull quite nicely. So I'm happy with that. Next, I'm just going to take a bunch of little pieces of foam and squares of other shapes and glue them on, just to add some more detail. And then I start rating my bits box. This little antenna piece is just something I collected over the years. All these pink pieces I think are from a Barbie stage from a previous video. And I'm just gluing these on haphazardly to this printer shape to try to add some more visual interest, some more interesting mechanical shapes, and things that are going to make this thing look like a plausible machine. Now, this sort of kit bashing is something I'm familiar with doing at a miniature scale, but it's kind of fun to work for once at a larger scale. You don't have to worry about things being so small and fiddly because they won't be sort of given the same level of scrutiny that a miniature would. And it's just kind of freeing to do things writ large for once. In order to make this thing look like it's floating, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use some of this galvanized steel wire. And this stuff is also available at a hardware store, and I'm just going to cut a nice length of that and then set it aside for later. Next, I'm using a power drill to drill some holes in, and with some old wires, I'm just going to feed some wires coming here in and out of the skull, a couple holes in the top of its head, and then glue some pieces of straw on as sort of connector insert looking pieces, and then feed wires through those with some hot glue. And this really helps sell the mechanical look. Next, I'm taking it outside and I'm giving it a nice coat of black spray paint and primer. This is really important as the skull is a sort of soft, waxy plastic that doesn't take paint very well, so you really need to prime it before going. I hit the side with some silver paint and then I bring it back in to give it a bone color back to the skull portion. As I mentioned, it's already a bone color when it starts, but this is just how you have to do things, I suppose. I really wanted the skull to have a nice, smooth, and almost glowing skull look to it, which is what real skulls look like. They've got a bit of that luminescence of smooth bone. So I really took my time and I did thin coats. I really didn't want to have any brush strokes sticking out when I did this. And this is just acrylic paint from Blick Art Store, just cheap acrylic paint, but going smooth and slow with the coats really helps. Next, I mixed up a brown wash. This is just to add some of that more yellowed, aged look to the skull. And once I'd applied that generously to the whole area, I came in with a piece of paper towel and I wiped it away from the raised areas. This is sort of a reverse highlight process that allows me to get some of that aged color in the recesses, but still have those nice, smooth, flat areas. I gave the mechanical components a dark black wash, just to pick out the detail and add some more, variation and darkness to the color. And then after that, I picked out the wires in some black just to add the contrast back and make them differentiated from the mechanical components around them. Back back to my steel wire. I bent myself an armature that was 4 layers thick and had 4 branching pieces coming out of the top. And this is important to get the head stable on its support so it doesn't swivel around too much and, you know, constantly droop its chin. Not that he has a chin anymore. But I drilled some holes in the bottom and then fed these different pieces into different holes, bringing them out through the hole that I cut in the roof of its mouth, and some pieces were fed into the back, into other holes, and this really gave it a stable hold once I blasted it with a whole bunch of construction adhesive in there. This Gorilla Glue construction adhesive is fantastic. It's sticky as heck, and it dries like a hard sort of gummy plastic. It has just enough give, but a ton of stick, and this is the perfect application for it. By the way, most of these products that I use will have a link in the description where you can get your own version of them if you'd like, so check that out if you're interested. Next, I'm adding here a piece of conduit covering. This is just for covering up, you know, wires coming out of your TV or something in the normal case, but that's going to make a beautiful little dangling conduit for my guy here. I patch up this ugly join where all the construction adhesive is with some cardboard once it's dry, by just putting in some hot glue and then adding a bunch of pieces of cardboard. And you can really easily make a mechanical look here just by faking it using pieces of chipboard, pieces of cardboard, layering them up in squarish shapes and gluing them on in a way that looks like some sort of connector piece or adapter outlet socket type deal. And this is just kind of a really low-tech way of dealing with the fact that I had all those wires coming out that hold it stable, and still getting sort of an interesting fitting on there. So next I put a bag over it so I can paint the stem here itself, tape it off with a little bit of blue masking tape, just so I don't get any paint on that skull that I've already painted. I take that out and I blast it with some more of that nice black primer that I got. And we are getting pretty close here, guys. Once I peel that bag off, all that is left to do is reattach that light, and then attach the clip that it comes with to the edge of my table or nearby shelf or what have you. Slot that thing through, stand it up, and we are good to go. Oh heck yeah, beautiful. Perfect. We can also put it on a shelf up above here if we want, just by putting the clip up there. Nice. Well, this was a really fun project, guys. A special thank you to all of my patrons. And, you know, I'm feeling like I should name this guy. Let me know down in the comments if you have any good names for this guy. Guys, I know a disembodied cybernetic skull bureaucrat is not most people's idea of cute, but I have to say I'm feeling a lot of affection for this thing. And, you know, it might be evidence that I've finally snapped, but I'm cool with it. I love this thing. And you know, I think this is the start of a beautiful friendship. Alright guys, I hope you liked that video. If you did, let me know what you thought in the comments down below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, all those good things. If you want to support the channel, please check out the links below. There's a link to my Patreon and Raid Shadow Legends, of course. And we'll see you next time on Eric's Hobby Workshop.